Transcend Talks. My name is John Murn. I'm a consultant here at Transcend Admission Consultants. And today I'm speaking with former client Emily Lin about her experience in applying for the MS in Commerce program at the University of Virginia. Last year when I worked with Emily, she was finishing up her undergraduate studies here in Taiwan. And she applied to at least one other program in addition to what we worked on at MS in Commerce in Virginia. So we'll touch on both of those. But before I ramble on too long, Emily, why don't you please take some time and introduce yourself? Thank you for being here.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Well, my name is Emily Lin, and like Mei Yi in Chinese, and I graduated from National Zhongzheng University with a bachelor's degree in foreign languages and literature. And I also took some business courses, and there is a sort of economic and management program in my university, and I also took that. So I do have some like basics knowledge of business, and yeah, that's pretty much about me.
Okay, great. So let's jump right in. You, as an undergraduate, you are already looking at your next program, right? You mentioned that foreign languages is where you started. And then when we talked about your essays, you told me that pretty early in your university career, you were interested in business and marketing. So you started taking those courses, as you just mentioned. At what point in your undergraduate studies did you start thinking in advance about an MS in management, or in this case, MS in commerce degree? How early were you looking at this as your next step?
Yeah, well, like compared with other people, some people started really early, but I'm not like I started looking into these master's degree in the US starting when I was a senior. It's not that early comparing with others, but I did had some interest in like business and marketing. So I took those courses out of my own interest. And at first I wanted to like enter the workplace once I graduate. But then I changed my plans because I feel that I still require more basic knowledge of business, because the basics of like the foundations of business are not that comprehensive. And the Masters in Commerce or like Masters in Management program, they allow you to like bridge like your past studies and with their materials, and to help you enter the workplace and become more competitive. So I feel that it will be a better way for me to be more competitive in like the business landscape.
Okay, great. So just being a little bit more specific for you personally, what skills are you hoping to either acquire or polish while you're in the commerce degree at Virginia?
Yeah, well, I feel that like since I wanted to work in business, right? But business is a really broad, not a broad like expertise. So I feel that since I wanted to work in like business related areas, I think it's good to know different aspects of business, like including accounting, finance, supply chain management, marketing, and so on. So like the Masters in Commerce program or Masters in Management program, they incorporate all these studies. But the special thing about like Masters in Commerce program is that they allow you to choose your specific track. So we have like marketing and management track, business analytics, and finance. So you can choose a field that you are more interested in, but also gaining like foundations of business in different aspects. So that's something that I was looking for. And besides that, like these sort of like Masters in Commerce and Masters in Management program, they tend to prefer students from a non-business background, because I think that they wanted you to combine your previous studies with their like business knowledge so you can become more competitive. And that would be a great advantage for people who wanted to work in like in business, but they don't have that sort of knowledge yet.
Okay, so you mentioned that you felt you were a little bit later than some of the other applicants in starting to do this process in your senior year of your undergraduate. How much time did you make for the application process, and did you feel that it was rushed, or did you feel that you had enough time? Because, you know, a lot of these programs start their acceptance periods as early as mid-September, and some of
Yeah.
them are accepting applications maybe into January. So what was your
Hmm.
application timeline like?
Yeah. So like I traveled to the US last February, and then I finally decided that I wanted to apply for a master's degree in the US. So I started to prepare for my applications, including like GMAT, TOEFL, starting from March. And I like, those tests require more time to prepare if you are not that good at English. But I'm from foreign languages and literature background, so I do have some basics on English. So I feel that it wasn't a rush for me. Like I started from March and I prepared for GMAT, TOEFL, and then I started to apply for those schools in October. So I could have more time to write those essays. And if you have a lot of universities to apply for, then of course you can extend the timeline and also give yourself more time to prepare for like TOEFL or um and the GMAT. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the essays. You happen to be a particularly strong writer, so you were able to kind of tackle those essays. But one thing I found that was unique about you as a candidate is that as an undergraduate, you really had a lot of extracurricular activities. You
Hmm.
worked with large conference events. You were a host of events at your university, and you held other roles. And those help to kind of give you stories to tell in
Hmm.
your essays. For those of you who are getting ready to apply to programs, you're frequently going to be asked about your leadership experience, your international experience, maybe a time that you failed at something. So there's a lot of these common questions, and it can be helpful to have personal experiences that allow you to tell those stories. So would
Definitely.
you recommend to
Hmm.
other people, maybe in their undergraduate studies, to try to get involved in one or two things, maybe a little bit deeply, so that it gives them some foundational things to talk about in their application?
Yeah, sure. Well, I feel that I wanted to emphasize on like international activities because when I was applying for these different universities, and they have a lot of essay prompts that are related to any situation you have encountered, that you work with people that are from a different cultural background or people that have different perspectives from you. And I think that the reason why they ask these sort of questions is because they wanted to know whether or not you are able to work with international students in the future, right? Since these programs would have a great diversity. Like for example, Duke and Masters in Commerce program at UVA, they both have a lot of different international students. So I do think that if you are still a student and you have time to participate in events, I would definitely recommend participating in international events that allow you to collaborate with international students or guests, or even like have any sort of conversation or forums. These sort of international activities would be a great advantage for you to like polish your essays and give you more stories to elaborate on your essay. So yeah, that's one thing that I wanted to focus on.
Okay, great. More generally, would you offer any essay writing tips to anybody? Any general thing, any approach that helped you get through the process? Any tip that we discussed that kind of helped you get going? What's one basic thing you would suggest to someone who's getting ready to write the essays? Because it can be very intimidating, right? It's
Yeah.
generally the most time-consuming part of your application, and it can involve
Mhm.
multiple rounds of edits. What's one thing
Yes.
you might offer as a essay writing tip?
Yeah. Well, I feel that like writing the when I write these essays, like when I start writing an essay, I would first do research on that specific school I'm applying for, so that I would look at like what qualities these university or this certain program they are looking for, so that I could list out my qualities to kind of like, connect the dots and match with their program so that when they are looking into my application, they would feel that, oh, I'm like a suitable candidate for them. For example, when I was writing the Duke's 25 random things about me, that's a very famous and, a very famous essay and a very special one. A lot of people would find that pretty intimidating because they didn't know, like, it's not really like a traditional essay prompt. But I feel that I really enjoy writing that essay because I'm able to reflect back to myself, and I can even think about whether or not I fit this program. That's also, one of the important things to think about, because a lot of people wanted to get into like highly ranked universities or great reputation schools. But I think the most important thing is whether or not this program fits you. And since you're applying for like graduate studies or like the master's degree or doctoral degree, so that it will be better for you to find a program that would help your like career goal, but not a university that only has the reputation or ranking, right? So yeah, well, I'm getting off the topic. I wanted to, I wanted to emphasize on like do more research on that specific university. For example, Duke. I feel that Duke prefers students who are diversified. Yeah, a student who is very diverse. Sorry,
Yeah.
students who are diverse and students who are collaborative, students who care about community. I think it's important. Like I found why like how to get into Duke is to look into their values. So I look at Fuqua's values, Duke's values, so I could better find the qualities that they are looking for. That would be my general tip for essay writing.
Yeah, we always recommend our clients to be thinking about and researching the programs that they might actually want to go to. Of course, everyone wants to get into the best program that they can. At least that's a starting point for a lot of people. And many people care about what school is on their resume. But
Yeah,
you raise a very good point, which is understanding if this program is a match for you, is a fit for you, is really important. For someone
mm-hmm.
like you who's coming from undergraduate, maybe you have an industry in mind, and there are universities that are aligned with certain industries. For example,
Yes,
people who work in healthcare, not as doctors, but in the business of healthcare, commonly will look at certain schools. Duke is one you mentioned. Schools
yes,
like Minnesota or Johns Hopkins. The same is true for other different kinds of things, whether it's working in tech or supply chain management. Simply going to what you think is a famous school name may not actually be the best program that helps you build the career path you want to build. So I really appreciate you noting that. And I think it's a great credit that you knew that early on in your process, because, of course, we all want the best education we can get. However, it's integral to think about the best education for you and your career. These universities actually view you going there as a relationship with them. So when you
absolutely.
research the school in the essays, when you answer something like the 25 questions, they want to know who you are, because part of the value they believe they're building is the community, and you are going to be a valuable member of that community. So it's also important for you to look at what their values are and talk and speak to that in the essay, but also proactively think about that. Think about if you are a good fit there. Can you speak briefly about, in addition to the 25 things essay, which is its own unique thing, could you speak briefly
Yeah.
about the different things you encountered between these two schools in the application process?
The master's in commerce program would require a lot of not like a lot of, but the master's in commerce program would require you to provide some prerequisite courses. So you have to take some courses in advance before you enter this program. But you can like take online courses to kind of get that course done. But that is something that is different, and um you have to finish that in advance, because like I said, I didn't start researching these programs early. So well, after I graduated, and then I realized that I still have some of the prerequisite courses that I still have to attend. So that would require you more time to look for like courses probably out of your university to get that prerequisite course solved. So I would recommend students who are still in college to do more research on the possible schools you are looking into and to take those prerequisite courses first so that you can avoid some problems afterwards. Yeah, and the Master's in Commerce program also require like the academic how do you say that? Like WES, like they help you check your academic report.
Okay, so they kind of require a verification. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, but Duke doesn't require that. But Duke does prefer students who have some outstanding performances in their internships and work experience. Yeah, that's also part of the reasons why they asked for like recommendations letters from like your previous managers, something like that.
Okay, great. So you've mentioned research multiple times, researching the programs. How did you go about researching these programs? Of course, they have their own websites, but there must be other resources or people that you could reach out to.
Yeah, absolutely. Like these programs, they would host a lot of like coffee chats, webinars before these applications. So these are great opportunities for you to look into before really applying for these programs, because these events would help you better understand that program, and you can even meet with some previous alumni, and they could like give you a better like help you get a better understanding of how that program really looks like, since they are the ones who really participated in those programs. So you could ask all the questions you wanted or get your problem solved. By doing so, um you can better know about like the insights into those different programs. So I would highly recommend you do that. And another thing is that by participating in these events before the application, some universities also offer like fee waiver. So you can save some money from doing that in events. And yeah, that's a win-win situation, right? So you can have a better understanding of the program and also save money, since application fees are quite a ton of money if you accumulate those money. Yeah.
For sure. That's a great tip. Okay. So watch out for info sessions online, because you can not only learn about the program, but possibly connect directly to alumni or people on the AdCom who might be able to answer some questions for you, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So in the end, you were accepted to both programs you applied to, correct?
Yeah,
And
I am.
how did you, congratulations, how did
Thank you.
you end up choosing Virginia over Duke? You know, both are very reputable programs, but both are considered top, top 20 business schools, that kind of thing. So, you talked earlier about understanding what's a better fit for you. So why did
Yeah.
Virginia become a better fit for you, and how did you determine that?
Yeah. So like this is definitely a hard decision when I was like finally making my final decision on these two schools. They are both like outstanding universities and like prestigious universities with great programs. So when I look into programs, I first look at whether or not this program fits my career goal. I think that's the thing that I emphasized on my research. And the reason why I ended up committed to the Master's in Commerce at University of Virginia is because it fits my career goal. I wanted to become a marketing analyst or business analyst who focuses on e-commerce, and like Duke not, but sorry, you like the Master's in Commerce program not only provides you with that knowledge of like all aspects of business, but it allows me to focus on the like a specific track, as I have mentioned. So I think that would be a great advantage for me, since I do wanted to learn like different business knowledge, but I also wanted to have a specific specific focus. I'm from like a foreign languages and literature background, and my major mainly focused on cultivating my soft skills, like interpersonal skills, critical thinking, and so on. So I really require those hard skills. So I'm looking into the program that will allow me to cultivate a second specialty. And the Masters in Commerce program is a perfect fit for me. And I do wanted to add something about the Masters in Commerce program is the Global Immersion Experience, which is abbreviated as GIE program. That is something really special in this Masters in Commerce program. I wanted to, I'm also interested in international business. So this GIE program is a program that allows us to visit 3 to 4 cities in May to June. So we would have some cultural visits, company visits, academic visits, allowing you to think about whether or not you wanted to work in that like international business or help you like get those insights in companies, that sort of thing. Like this kind of leads me to my final decision on the Masters in Commerce program. Yeah.
Okay. Great. So, you know, I think Emily is a great example of how much research you can consider doing on a program before you make your final choice. Before you narrowed your list to Virginia and Duke, Emily, I'm guessing you started researching with a longer list of schools, and then you narrow that down, and then you're looking closely at the schools you're applying to, and then when it comes time to decide between two great programs you're accepted to, you know, you were able to identify things that are personally relevant and important to you.
Yeah, I feel that like the Masters in Commerce program at UVA is kind of underrated in Asian countries. It's probably because they have fewer international students in the past, but they are gaining more nowadays. And I think that when students are looking into like whichever program best suits them, I think they can first think about where do they want to get their first job, because both of like Duke's program and the UVA's program, they are both STEM designated. So of course you can get your first job in the US first. And if you get a job in the US first, and then probably you wanted to move to another country, move back to Taiwan, I think like ranking or reputation doesn't really matter, because like companies, they would rather look at you, how your working experience was, and how you like what you learned from your program, that sort of thing. So I think that is one point that I wanted to add on.
Great. Again, I appreciate you adding that on. You're kind of doing my job for me. So, you know, again, while it's great to have a good school name on your resume, I totally agree with Emily. You know, within 2 to 3 years of working experience, what you're doing in your career, how you're specializing, what direction you're going, becomes the most important thing for your career.
Yes.
So, Emily, both programs you applied for do have an interview as part of the application process. You know, this is another, for some applicants, this is another high stress touch point in the application process. You know, you're facing someone you've never spoken to before. You hope to speak eloquently about yourself and tell good stories. But there's a lot of, you know, nuances to having a good interview. You don't want to ramble on. You know, you want to put your best foot forward. Could you give us 1 or 2 tips that helped you have hopefully smooth interview processes?
Yeah, sure. Well, the first thing is, of course, to have confidence and feel like you have to put yourself in a situation that you are probably talking with a friend and you just wanted to share a story or share more about yourself to him or her. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that I would also look at, like, some interviews, they would provide the interviewers information in advance. So I would first look at like who I will be talking to, and what does him or her focused on, like whichever profession him or her has. And I would ask like specific questions. Like for Duke's interviewer, she was one of the alumni in the program. So she was not like an admissions officer or something, but she was more like a student. So I could like casually talk with her, share with her about more about myself. And I also looked into like which focus she chose when she was in college and even her master's degree, so that I could ask specific questions to her and she would feel that, oh, she have a lot of like she have many things to talk to me about, and I'm a person who asks questions and I'm a person who is proactive. You could send those information to that person who is talking to you by doing more research and asking the right questions in advance. And it's also important to, like, in the end of these interviews, they would always ask you, like, do you have any questions? Like, it's a perfect opportunity for you to express. It's a great opportunity for you to ask the questions that you are still curious about. I think it will also allow the person who is interviewing you to better know your personality. Like the whole interview process, I feel that it's a great way for you to just make the best of yourself and just feel confident and feel confident of sharing more about you.
Okay.
That's my general tip.
Yeah, it sounds to me like your tip is also kind of like, think of it as a conversation. It doesn't have to be a one-way interview where, the spotlight is shining on you and you feel nervous. You also have room to express your personality, to ask questions, and participate in an active way, not simply be passively receiving questions and things like that, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just have one last question, Emily. You've already been accepted to the program. You have some career outlook and aspirations, but has there been anything that you've been doing to help continue to prepare yourself to get ready for your program?
Yeah, so well, I did take some courses. Like there are a lot of time for you to look into what you will be studying, and I wanted to better prepare myself for these programs and even for my career. Since both of these programs are only a 1-year program, so it's pretty accelerated. So you don't really have much time to, like to slowly look at your career aspiration or so on. So I did take some like Excel courses or like data analysis tool courses in advance to help me prepare for these programs. And I also take some English speaking courses to kind of help me adapt to the English environment in the future, since we have been living in Taiwan for a while and my English is pretty rusty now. So that is something that I did in advance to prepare for my program.
Okay, great. So, I think that sounds to me like don't stop polishing your skills as you get ready for the program, right? You're kind of, sounds to
Yeah.
me, Emily, like you're doing a little tune-up to make sure that you feel sharp at the start of your program, and that way it gives you a chance to kind of hit the ground running and really get involved when you're there at Virginia, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. I had a great time working with you during the application
Mm.
process, and I knew that I would be able to have an easy and comfortable conversation with you about your experience. So thank you for making time to share that with us. And let's keep in touch. I want to hear about how it goes
Yeah.
at Virginia.
Thank you for inviting me though.
Not at
Thank you
all.
so much.
Not at all. We'll speak soon. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you. Bye.